Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to cover the process of annealing. Typically when you purchase your sheet metal, it's in a hardened state because of the way it's made at the foundry. Metal can also be work hardened if you have hammered it with a steel hammer or you've put it through the rolling mill. Metal will work harden. And if you're going to continue to work the metal, or anytime you want to bend metal or form metal, you need to anneal it first. Now, metals have a specific temperature for annealing. Problem is, we have no way to calculate that temperature. So I go by color, the color of the metal. I can't put a little thermometer on there to check the temperature. So I heat the metal until it's a dull red, and that indicates that that metal is annealed. So I'm going to turn the light out so that you can see that color, or I want you to see that color. For this piece of metal, I guess that's about 2 inches by 6 inches. I'm going to use the number 2 torch tip. So I'm going to light my torch. I'm going to use a relatively high flame because it's a sizable piece of metal. And I'm working on a heat reflective surface. This is a solderite soldering pad. And I'm going to start by making large circles around the piece of metal. You don't want to heat it too much too soon, or you can create thermal shock. And that can create problems further down the road. So large circles around the piece of metal, kind of heating the pad and let the pad reflect the heat back to the metal. You want to keep an even rhythm. Don't go too fast. Don't go too slow. And you want to keep the tip of the blue cone about 1 inch away from the surface of the metal. And you also want to make sure that you keep the torch directly over the metal. Don't angle it this way. We want to heat evenly. What I don't want is a piece of annealed metal that still has hard spots. Alright, so I'll continue circling for a few more minutes, and then what I'll do is circle half of the metal. I've started making my circles a little smaller. I'm kind of closer to the outer edge of the piece of sheet metal now. So what this is basically doing, your metals have a crystalline structure. So what I'm doing is rearranging the crystals. It's called recrystallization. So anytime you hammer this metal or bend it or put it through the rolling mill, you're rearranging the crystals. So now annealing is going to rearrange them again. Alright, so I'm going to circle half of this sheet now. I'll do that for a few minutes, and then I will circle 1/4 of the sheet. And then I'm going to start watching the color. As soon as I see dull red on this end, I will start moving my circles down the strip, and I'll make sure that I overlap them. This will ensure even annealing. Alright, it's going to happen any minute. Here it comes. There's my dull red. So I'm going to start moving my circles down the strip, overlapping them, till I get to the other end. I think the metal looks a little redder in the video than it is in person. I'm looking at the camera screen and it looks almost cherry red, but it's not on my pad. Alright, right down to that end. We want even annealing, and there we go. So I'm going to turn the torch down. I'm going to take my tweezers and move this out of the way because I want to anneal a small piece of metal. That I should be able to do just by circling the whole piece. That's a, if you can see that, that's a small piece. So I'm going to turn my torch back up a little bit, not as high as for that long strip, and just circle around that. And the pad is already hot, so that's actually going to kind of preheat my little piece of metal. And you always want to make sure that you pick up these pieces with tweezers. I think every beginner, well, even some experienced jewelers, I've done it myself, you forget and you pick up a piece of hot metal with your hand. You'll do that once or twice and you won't do it again. Alright, so I should be seeing dull red any minute. Notice too that the metal has gotten very dark, it's very dirty. And here comes my dull red. Those are oxides that have built up on the surface. It's from the torch. Alright, I'm going to put this light back on. And then my next step is to quench. I have a little bucket over here. If I can just turn my camera a little bit, sorry. I have a bucket of water, and I'll quench my metal. And I would also quench the big strip, but I'm not going to take the time to do that. Behind my bucket, I don't think you can see it. Maybe you can just see the very bottom of my crock pot. And in the crock pot, I have an acid, a very mild acid solution. Let's see if I can pick this up a little bit. Get my arm out of the video. I have a very mild acid solution. It's called Sparex. And it will clean these oxides off of my sheet metal. And so I like to use a crock pot because I like to use the Sparex warm. It cleans faster and better, but it can be used cold. And I'll place this. I won't drop it in because I don't want the Sparex to splash back, maybe go in my eye. Place it into the solution and you'll let it soak in there until the oxides are removed. Now that could be 5 minutes, could be 10 minutes, could be half an hour. It varies. You just have to keep coming back and checking on it. Now I like to keep the lid on because it helps to keep the fume down in the pot rather than all over the studio. Typically I would have an exhaust fan running in the window, but that doesn't work well when you're making videos. So safety first, always. When the metal is clean, you take it out with copper tongs. And the reason for copper tongs is if you touch that solution with steel tweezers, you'll create a chemical reaction and all the metals in your pickle pot will copper plate. So always use copper tongs in the pickle, not steel tweezers. So when that piece of metal is clean, I'll remove it from the pickle. I'll rinse it off in the water. I'll take a soft brass brush. This is called a washout brush or a scratch brush. And I'll wet this, rub it in a bar of soap, and scrub my metal clean. Rinse it well, dry it well, and then proceed to whatever I'm going to do next to that piece of metal. All right, I hope this was helpful for annealing, and